London, a city with a rich and glorious history, the jewel in the British crown for centuries, a city that has endured everything from the attacks of the Vikings and Normans to the Blitz bombing by the Germans in World War II. A city that controls the power and wealth of the British Empire, and indeed the world. Hold on, that's not London at all, and that city can boast none of these financial claims. All of those claims belong to the City of London. But wait, that is London, right? Nope. The City of London is an entirely autonomous entity of exactly 1 square mile within London proper, but it is not part of London, it is not part of the British Empire or the United Kingdom or the EU, but it controls them all, and so much more by virtue of the financial structure that it is. The City of London has roughly 10,000 residents, and these people are known as freemen, and they pay no tax to the British Crown, and the corporation that the City of London is finds all sorts of ways to pay no taxes at all. The City of London has a mayor, the Lord High Mayor, in fact. He travels around in a gilded gold carriage and wears the most preposterous-looking hat one could imagine. He serves for 1 year, receives no pay, and has to pay all his own expenses along the way. He does, however, get to live in a very fancy abode. Unlike London, who just recently elected its first mayor back in 2000, the City of London has elected a mayor going back 650 years. The foundations for what became this City of London started as a Roman outpost called Londinium back in 1010 or so, and the Romans had fortified the place by building a wall around it and a Roman bathhouse near the shore of the Thames River. Then in 1060, William the Conqueror, sometimes known as William the Bastard because his parents weren't married when he was born. I wasn't there, but people are saying. Anyway, he invaded Britain and set about doing all the destruction and mayhem he's famous for. But he was unable to conquer this little 1 square mile area, and a deal was struck so that this little isolated place would remain separate and autonomous. But he did want to keep an eye on the place, so he built the Tower of London Castle and used its vantage points to have knights and guards watch over the walls surrounding the City of London. That precedent has remained in effect to this very day. The City of London is one of 33 boroughs within London proper, and it has its own coat of arms, its own flag, its own laws completely separate from British law, and its own police force completely separate from the London Police and Scotland Yard. The British Empire and the royal family govern by divine rule. That is to say, God has given them the right to govern. The City of London does not follow this decree at all. They are known as freemen and are in fact a corporation with many different guilds or liveries within. Although they ceased using the term guild many years ago, they are referred to as livery companies. Each guild has its own coat of arms, and there are many of these guilds: stonemasons, goldsmiths, ironworkers, fishmongers, shipwrights, distillers, wood craftsmen, dryers, international bankers, and tax advisors. The stonemasons are of particular interest if one takes notice of the historical buildings within the City of London. They are very well-built stone structures that stand just as strong today as they did hundreds of years ago, a testament to the Masons. Freemasons, by the way. But those last two are very important to the overall success of what this little island within a country has done over the centuries. In the 1700s, a successful money changer and royal advisor named Meyer Rothschild sent his 5 sons to different locations around the world to set up a banking network as branches from their then home base of Frankfurt, Germany, which at the time was part of the Holy Roman Empire. The 5 sons landed in Brussels, Paris, Copenhagen, Spain, and England. They financed many wars, including the Napoleonic Wars, and even provided much-needed funds to the money-starved Americans as they set about to declare independence from the British Crown. Yes, the Rothschilds certainly burned the candle at both ends when it came to financing military operations. All of these financial endeavors were done on credit to the different governments, thereby creating a situation that made the governments indebted to the bankers. And the governments were, by and large, only capable of covering the interest on these loans, and they would never be able to get themselves out from under the thumb of these banks. It was that way then, and it's still that way now. One of these sons, Nathan Meyer Rothschild, went to England, specifically London, and as a result of the City of London being an autonomous entity with different rules and different laws, that's where he set up shop and established N.M. Rothschild in 1810. Shortly after establishing his banking house, he administered the first of many financial transactions with the British Crown, and they've owned them ever since. They were quite shrewd in their banking endeavors and financed a number of wars over the centuries, usually backing both sides, so that in one way or another, no matter who won the war, the Rothschilds came out the winners from a monetary standpoint. Their influence grew over the years and were knighted by the British Crown for their great assistance they provided over the centuries. The British money, the pound, was originally based on the price of sterling silver, hence the use of terms like £5 sterling being associated with British money. But the British government does not produce their money. It does come from the Bank of England, but that bank has nothing to do with England at all. It does, however, have everything to do with the Rothschild family, and they are, along with a select few others, the controllers of the Bank of England, and they produce the currency that is used in England. The Rothschilds played a major role in the creation of the monetary system for the EU. But unlike the other countries in the EU, England kept the pound as the currency and doesn't use euros as their common currency. The Bank of England building is not even in England. It is in the City of London, which is not part of England, not part of the United Kingdom. It is autonomous. I know, it's strange. The Bank of England, and thereby the City of London, controls nearly 25% of all financial transactions conducted worldwide on a daily basis. At the conclusion of the Second World War, the British Empire began its descent downward and eventually crumbled, and they lost colony after colony and no longer had physical control of any of the vast land masses they once had. The saying, "The sun never sets on the British Empire," is a long-gone slogan. The British Crown may well have lost physical control, but the Bank of England still controls all the money and the exchanges in India, Africa, the West Indies, the East Indies, and various island nations all across the globe. So, no more tanks in the streets or hooligans beating down lowly peasants. But the government was run on the British pound, and in order for them to operate, they had to take out loans to run their countries. Loans that could never be paid back because they could barely pay the interest on the loans. In some instances, they had to take out additional loans to pay the interest on previous loans. Under the thumb is an understatement. In America, the same sort of backdoor shenanigans went on during the Wilson administration, when a group of financiers consisting of representatives of J.P. Morgan, the Rockefellers, and the Rothschilds gathered together on Jekyll Island in Georgia and crafted what became the Federal Reserve Act. And Woodrow Wilson signed the Federal Reserve Act in 1913. Prior to this, the United States created its own money, and that money was backed by gold. The U.S. Mint was in fact a U.S. Mint. You could walk into any bank in America with a $1 bill and demand to have the equivalent value given to you in gold. These were known as gold certificates. With the creation of the Federal Reserve, the United States government gave away their right to create their own money. The money you hold in your pocket right at this very moment is nothing more than a debt certificate. The Federal Reserve loans money to the U.S. government, with interest of course, and the government doles this money out to the various banks across the country through the distribution outposts scattered across the country. The money is not backed by gold, it's not backed by silver, it's not even backed by lead. It's backed by thin air and numbers created on some spreadsheet somewhere. In 1919, President Wilson severely chided himself for his decision to sign that particular piece of legislation and said publicly, "I am a most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country. A great industrial country is now controlled by its system of credit. We are no longer a government by free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and the vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion of a small group of dominant men." That same sort of monetary control exists in Europe, England, and elsewhere in the world, all controlled by banking interests controlled in one way or another by the Rothschild family and their banking and financial advisory entities, which are all headquartered in the City of London. Another of the financial institutions located in the City of London of particular interest is Lloyd's of London. They began in a coffee house in the 1700s and were insurers for and to the shipping concerns of that day, much of which involved insuring the ships that transported the slaves needed for the cultivation of sugarcane to produce rum and other liquors. And as the Livery Company's coat of arms shows, distillers are on that list, so they ended up getting a piece of the pie as well, as do the shipwrights, who had to build all those ships that allowed the British to travel across the oceans of the world. These same shipbuilding liveries, the ironmongers, were also involved in the building of warships Britain has used on the high seas once the ships began being made of steel instead of wood. All of these different liveries have to be insured, and Lloyd's of London will provide that insurance. They have always been known as the company that will insure just about anything. They insured the Titanic and lost a bundle on that one. They've insured everything from Betty Grable's legs for $1 million, no less, to the newest crop of spaceships being produced by the EU space agencies. All of these different entities are under the umbrella of the corporation that is known as the City of London. There are some that believe the City of London is much the same as Vatican City in Rome, which of course is not part of Rome, nor Italy for that matter. It's a separate country unto itself, and is guarded by the Swiss Guard for some ages-old reason. But unlike the Vatican, the City of London is a corporation, and the various elected members, be that an alderman, a councillor, or the Lord High Mayor, are elected by the companies, not by the residents. Even though the residents are, quote, freemen, they have no say whatsoever with regards to elections. So anyone who might think the City of London is a democracy would be way off base on that thought. There have been many protests over the years and attempts to bring the City of London into the fold of the UK, but all of these attempts have failed. They have an odd power that no one has really been able to crack. The Queen, or the King, if there were one on the throne, cannot just waltz into the City of London. They must stop at one of the various border dragons situated on all four cardinal points of the compass surrounding its boundaries and wait until they are invited in by the mayor or one of his chosen representatives. There's a lot of pomp and circumstance associated with these occurrences, and the people wear some rather outlandish garb with lots of bows and curtsies and swinging swords and so forth. The landscape within the City of London has changed over the years and centuries, and long gone is the daily use of the stone edifices, and those companies have moved into newer, more modern, high-rise skyscrapers, some of which are rather odd and interesting. The Gherkin building, for example, also known as the London Penis, is one of the more interesting designs, along with the new headquarters of Lloyd's of London. The British Stock Exchange is also located within the City of London, and they long ago moved out of the historic stone building that they occupied for over 100 years and have a modern steel structure. Steelworkers are also one of the liveries and are responsible for the construction of all the new building. just as the masons dealt with the stone structures of old. One of the more interesting modern livery companies is the information technologists. All of the financial associations have certainly not remained in the past when it comes to technology, and the computer infrastructure required to move vast sums and stay on top of all the trades and so on have all been addressed since the dawn of the computer age. There are those that claim the computer infrastructure beneath the City of London would put the NSA to shame with regards to its capacity to process information. Beneath the City of London is a vast array of tunnels and storage spaces, and the Bank of England in particular has some very secure storage spaces. They hold, on a daily basis, all the physical paper currency that will be distributed to the various banking concerns around the city and indeed the country. In addition to this storage, there are persistent rumors regarding the vast quantities of gold being held beneath the streets. Some even claim that much of the recovered gold bullion from the German hoards found during World War II found their way into these storage spaces. There's really no way to fact-check these claims, as that the Bank of England and the City of London do not allow any inspections of any of these spaces beneath the streets. They have, on occasion, allowed the odd journalist to do a story on the cash reserves held beneath the streets, but aside from that, no one is allowed in. Same thing goes for the gold reserves in America. No one, not even the president, can go into their storage facilities to do any sort of audit on the actual amount of physical gold that is being held within their coffers. Finally, the one remaining financial corporation to speak about is the London Stock Exchange, which, as you might imagine, is not located in London. It's located within the City of London. This financial entity has a history dating back to the early 1700s, when Dutch, British, and Swiss merchants and bankers began trading certificates for the value of commodities held within the hulls of ships cruising around on the ocean at the time. In many instances, when the commodities were originally bought and paid for, they were worth, let's say $100. But at the time that the ship made port, the demand for said commodity had risen, and in so doing so did the price and the value of that commodity, and people would trade, basically a bet, that what they paid for the stock at time A is exceeded by the value when they sell it at time B. That's a very simplistic explanation of what, over the years, has become a very complex system of speculation, trade, and barter on a worldwide scale. Those traders in England are conducted at the London Stock Exchange and are done primarily based on the British pound, and as we've already discussed, those pounds are not British at all. The humble beginnings of the trades done in the coffee houses and taverns, scribbled on small scraps of paper and signed in some instances with blood, have grown to be a very powerful arbitrator of world economics. The New York Stock Exchange certainly garners more press coverage in America than the London Stock Exchange, but any trade that is done in New York is behind the curve, because the London Stock Exchange had already been opened for hours ahead of New York. All of these global exchanges deal with the transmission of value on something in particular, and that value is associated with whatever form of currency is behind whatever it may be, and that currency is tied in one way or another to the financial entities located within the 1 square mile of the City of London.